Today, we're diving into one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Taj Mahal. But, this isn't just a building. It's really an epic poem written in marble, and at its heart is one of the most incredible and tragic stories you'll ever hear. And it all starts with a little secret, a puzzle, really.
So, let's start with that puzzle. If you look really closely at the Taj Mahal, you might notice something a little off about its 4 massive pillars. They're not perfectly straight up and down. They're actually leaning slightly outwards. So why? Why would you build it like that? Well, the answer to that question unlocks some of the building's most brilliant secrets.
Okay, so what's the deal with the lean? It's pure genius is what it is. For one, it's an optical illusion. It actually makes the pillars look perfectly straight to our eyes from a distance. But there's a much more important reason. It's an earthquake-proof design. The idea was if a quake ever hit, the pillars would fall away from the main tomb, protecting it from damage. Just brilliant. And that's just one of its secrets. We're also going to touch on its color-changing marble and that perfectly engineered dome. But to understand why anyone would go to these lengths, we have to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, to really get why this place exists, you have to understand that its story doesn't begin with blueprints or architects. Nope. It begins with a romance, an incredible love story between an emperor and his wife that would literally change the course of history.
It all started back in 1607. A 15-year-old prince named Khurram met and fell completely in love with a young woman, Mumtaz Mahal. This prince would grow up to become a legendary leader, earning the title Shah Jahan, which means Emperor of the World. By 1628, he was on the Mughal throne, and Mumtaz wasn't just his wife. She was his #1 advisor, his partner in everything. But then, in 1631, their incredible story came to a sudden, tragic end, when Mumtaz died while giving birth to their 14th child.
And look, this wasn't just some standard royal marriage. Shah Jahan had 6 wives, which, was pretty common for an emperor back then. But his relationship with Mumtaz, that was something else entirely. He was completely devoted to her. Her death didn't just break his heart, it absolutely shattered his entire world.
And in the middle of all that heartbreak, that profound loss, a final promise that Mumtaz asked of him on her deathbed would completely take over his life. It became his one and only purpose.
Her last wish was simple but huge. She said, "Build for me the most beautiful tomb in the world." And for Shah Jahan, this wasn't just a request. It became a sacred vow. He was going to dedicate his entire reign, the entire wealth of his empire, to fulfilling that promise no matter what it cost.
The emperor's grief was, well, it was absolute. They say he didn't eat for 8 straight days after she died. And for 2 full years, there was no music in his court, no perfumes, nothing that brought joy. His world had just collapsed, and the only way he could see forward was to pour every ounce of that pain and love into making her final wish a reality.
So he was going to build an eternal monument. He picked this beautiful spot right on the banks of the Yamuna River. But there was a huge problem. It was an engineering nightmare. How in the world do you build a massive, unbelievably heavy marble structure on soft, unstable river soil?
But the Mughal engineers, they came up with something absolutely brilliant. First, they dug a series of super deep wells, digging and digging until they hit solid dry ground. Then they filled those wells with rock and rubble, packing them tight. And on top of that, they built these massive stone columns, creating an incredibly stable foundation that has held up the weight of the Taj Mahal for nearly 400 years. Just incredible.
Okay, so with the foundation set, the sheer scale of this project is just mind-boggling. First, an army of 20,000 people. Laborers, sculptors, the best craftsmen you could find were brought in from all over the empire.
And these 20,000 people worked for 22 straight years. Think about that, an entire generation dedicated to building this one single monument.
The logistics were just insane. To haul all the heavy marble and other materials to the construction site, they needed a fleet of over 1,000 elephants.
And the cost? Well, the cost is almost impossible to imagine. In today's money, the best estimates put it at over $1 billion. The entire treasury of an empire all poured into keeping a single promise.
Shah Jahan spared no expense at all. The entire building is covered in this beautiful Makrana marble, the best in the world, which had to be dragged over 400 kilometers. And get this, to show how serious he was, he issued a decree that the entire supply of this marble was reserved for the Taj Mahal. Nobody else in the whole empire could buy it until his promise was finished.
You know all those beautiful, intricate designs you see on the walls? Well, those aren't painted on. They were made using a technique called pietra dura.
This is where artists painstakingly cut tiny pieces of precious and semi-precious stones and fit them perfectly into the marble, creating this seamless, stunning pattern that has lasted for centuries.
And that special marble had another almost magical effect. The Taj Mahal actually seems to change color depending on the time of day. Before dawn, it can look dark, almost gray. Then at sunrise, it gets this soft pink and yellow glow. By midday, it's a spectacular, brilliant white. And as the sun sets, it just glows with this warm, golden light. It's like a living building that changes with the sky.
So, after 22 long years, the promise was kept. The most beautiful tomb in the world was finally finished. But achieving this masterpiece came with a price tag that was way, way higher than just money.
And this is where the story takes its most tragic turn. On the one hand, Shah Jahan had done it. He created this immortal monument to his love. But on the other hand, the enormous cost had nearly bankrupted the Mughal Empire. And while he was so focused on fulfilling his promise, his own son saw the empire weakening, and he saw his chance to grab power.
So Shah Jahan, the emperor of the world, was overthrown by his son and imprisoned in a nearby fort. For the last 8 years of his life, the man who built one of the greatest wonders of all time was given only one little luxury: a window where he could look out and see the Taj Mahal. His promise, finally complete, but now forever out of his reach.
When he finally died, he was buried right where he always wanted to be, inside the Taj Mahal, laid to rest right next to his beloved Mumtaz, finally reunited in the eternal home he had built just for them.
So when you look back at this incredible story of love, of loss, of creation, you're left with this one big question. Is the Taj Mahal the ultimate monument to love? Or is it a timeless warning about how even the purest devotion, when it becomes an obsession, can have devastating consequences? Something to think about.